Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about the future. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, what do you think is the future of software engineering? Could advancements in technology eventually render it obsolete, or will these advancements serve as valuable tools that enhance the work of software engineers rather than replacing them? I would say that it depends a bit on the time frame that you're talking about. So my guess is that sooner or later, all forms of cognitive work would be, if it is possible. Now this is theoretical because I simply don't know if we are even capable of producing what would be referred to, I suspect, as general AIs, the sort of AIs that you see in the movies and so forth, where you have like robots or computers that are basically sentient. If you get to that point, then yeah, you're pretty much not really like then thought in of itself may not necessarily be something that you need a software developer to do. You might be able to do quite a bit with just like an average person plus this sort of AI. If you think about the Iron Man movies a little bit, that sort of thing, right? Where you might have a very innovative person like Tony Stark in that movie, right? Who has an AI that basically does like can execute on most things for him. And that I suspect is where it would have to be for people to be completely obsolete in terms of software development. But I mean that would be true for quite a lot of professions, like law, for example, medicine, so forth and so forth, because you're basically talking about having like a synthetic brain or a synthetic entity that knows how to do all these sorts of things, right? But if I were to guess what I think the future of software engineering is, well, it depends a little bit on specifics here because software engineering is bigger than, let's say, what I primarily work with, which is web. I would say that I suspect that the future, at least for me and my coworkers and the people in like my peers and so forth, would be AI as well. But I don't think it's necessarily the case that it's a question of that we're being replaced. But I think that rather that the products that we develop will be more geared towards that sort of functionality. Where, for example, I've said it before that one thing that quite a lot of us are working with is things like hashing algorithms or symmetric and asymmetric keys and encryption and security and things like that, right? Now I know based on my experience that very few software developers actually know anything about security or anything about cryptography and so forth and so forth. And for sure we don't understand the mathematics behind, say, a like how to calculate, how to create a secure key or something like that, right? But what we do know is how we consume the tools and the libraries necessary in order to produce a secure, like a TLS connection or a certificate or something like that, right? And I suspect that the AIs of the world will, like those libraries, will go the same way, where you have certain groups who are extraordinarily talented and good at creating models and libraries and stuff like that. It's exactly the same thing with cryptography, where you have mathematicians and groups who are like extraordinarily gifted when it comes to that stuff. And it even is as you probably may or may not know, that it's sort of a general guideline to everybody who is in software that we say to them, don't try to implement your own cryptography algorithm. Use one of the existing ones, because we sort of admit that it's so difficult to do that and not have it be exploitable or crackable or something like that, that it's a little bit unlikely that you're going to be able to do it better than the professionals who've been doing it and like perfected it. And for me, I think that AI will go the same way, where our products will more and more depend on that we have APIs and systems that are geared towards integration to like language models and things like that, and that our own systems might depend on libraries that are very closely associated with that sort of that, like with an AI of some sort, which means that we would probably have to go and learn how to consume a lot of those libraries, and there's probably going to come, I'm guessing now, something new along the lines of like these frameworks and libraries that we are using, right? But for AI purposes, because I can suspect that once, well, that's at least what I suspect is, well, that's what's happening in my specific company right now, where one of the big things that I think AI can bring to the table, which is for me the next big thing, like the next hurdle, is like most of, like right now we have an issue with trying to get very, very secure and predictable results out of an AI. As I like to say, if you know what an AI, if you know the answer, or the answer, the details don't really matter all that much, and AI is super, super, super useful. But if you are very unsure about what the results are and the details do matter, like where you don't really have a room for error or something like that, it's very dangerous to trust an AI at this point, because they do get things wrong, like every single model, and it's not uncommon, it's still very common for them to give you an incorrect answer, right? So that's the first thing that needs to sort of be rectified. But what's happening afterwards, I think, is that we will have domain specific AIs, where right now the models that we are using are trained on data sets that come from the internet. But for, say, my company, as an example, where we have a few initiatives related to it, we've been trying to do the thing that I suspect a lot of companies are trying to do, like where we're trying to train models, or well, not train them, but we are trying to load them with content that is specific to, like, that's private information that has nothing, like it's not publicly available on the internet, right? And teach it things related to the company. It's very similar to, again, if we take Iron Man, where Jarvis, or like that AI system, knows everything about Tony Stark in movie, right? Like they have a history together, so to speak, and the AI knows how to discuss and talk to the individual. It's the same thing here, where I suspect that companies who have, especially like a really, really large companies who may have call centers or things like that, where there's a bunch of policies, and that's not necessarily the only case, even for internal stuff, like, who is the department head of some department, or where do I get that form, or who do I call if something happens, and stuff like that. That sort of information would be the next leap, I think, where you have a base layer of AI that sort of the way we have it today, right? Only as, of course, as more accurate, and then you train it to know things that it may not have learned in the initial stages of training. So again a little bit like how cryptography works for us. Someone has made the algorithm in order to create a secure cipher, and then someone else has come along and provided an API or like a library that we people, like we software developers, we use in our applications to encrypt and like hash and things like that, right? And I think that AI will go the same way, and my suspicion is that that is going to be the next big hurdle, and then most of our software development will be geared towards trying to create systems that are optimized for feeding that information to systems such as that. Overall, I think that the human aspect, like how the web works today, or how like you use computers and so forth, I think that that's going to stay pretty much the same for quite some time, at least in the web space. I don't think that's changing in a, like, can't even foresee what would be more efficient. But what I'm saying is that I think that the next big thing is that the way we think about API design and systems and data and like storing information and so forth will go from just being something that we right now doing in the format where it's a little bit arbitrary, to being much more like almost standardized on storage systems and data, like storage systems and ways of storing information that are perfectly aligned with how an AI would need it to be in order for it to learn all that information. I do that as an example in one of my projects, where we trained an like as a proof of concept an AI model on was just using a repository. For those of you who watched my videos, you may or may not know that one of my favorite ways of storing information is in just a Git repo with markdown files. And that is an example of, since everything that I have, like all the knowledge I have, all the guides, everything that is related to my work is in a markdown file, it's very easy to train an AI model on that. So it was literally just upload a bunch of files and hi, there you go, your AI now knows how to answer questions. And then accuracy and stuff like that comes down to basically the people who implement the algorithm. That sort of mindset. But as you can imagine, for like a really large company who have many departments, not everybody's going to work in Markdown. But who knows? Maybe this will become the Markdown revolution. I don't know. So what I want you to take away from this is that I think that the future of software engineering is absolutely AI based, but I don't think that there is anything right now. Like I think that the question is rendered towards, are we going to be obsolete, or are we going to get something that makes us become even more effective? And I think that the latter seems to be the most likely outcome here, because as I said before, you can completely remove the software developer or so forth. You very much need because that's literally my job, guys. It's the job of every software developer. I am an expert in something that someone else is not, and when they want me to build a system, they have to try to explain to me roughly what they want, and then I use my human brain, which is, as far as we know, one of the most, if not the most advanced brain we have, and to derive what they are trying to say and then convert it into code. And as I like to explain to people, like, that's not what an AI is able to do today. You really need to know you need to know enough about the thing you want and how it's going to work in order to tell the AI what you want it to do, and then correct it if it makes mistakes. And that's not something that is very easy for a person who knows nothing. I mean, that most people don't even know what code is and how to explain it, and that makes it very, very difficult for current AI to solve any problems, because as I said, the reason why it's working right now is because you have a sentient being, well, I'm pretty sure I'm sentient at the very least, relate and ask clarification, like sort of based on my experiences, help people make a system that I know how to make, right? So I mean, in a really, really best case scenario, you might be able to have me sit and talk to a stakeholder, understand what code needs to be written, and then in my language, like maybe I don't have to type anything, maybe I just tell the AI, you need to make a REST API with these endpoints, blah 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 blah. Like maybe I can just use speech, who knows? But I suspect that the most likely next thing is going to be that more and more of information and like the way that we use Google search and stuff like that might change towards being more a conversation with an AI chat system rather than being you sort of going out on the internet trying to find things by yourself. I think that a personal assistant type of thing that we have to, like those systems that we have today, they will go to a new level. And for us software developers, it will very much very likely be a question of learning how to work with various services and libraries, just as we today work with cryptography, for example, or other tools that we have to support our workflow. Have a great day.